Brazen thefts were caught on camera. Investigators say the same alleged thieves came back day after day after day at a Home Depot, in this case making off with $18,000 in power tools.
So as New York City wrestles with increasing crime and rioting, there's even more illegal activity happening behind the scenes. Because while distracted law enforcement has its hands full, career criminals, some of whom are here illegally, won't let this crisis go to waste and are clearing out superstores and shopping centers without anyone trying to stop them.
Heist after heist carried out hundreds of times in chain hardware superstores across the Northeast. A 13-member crew charged with stealing merchandise worth an estimated $2.2 million, sold on the black market.
8 men have been indicted on charges of conspiracy and grand larceny for a 6 heist of beef, lamb, cheese, copper, including the accused mastermind, who is also wanted by immigration and back in his home country of Uzbekistan.
We believe that at least some of the food was meant for grocery stores, like a Costco, for example. And when food orders go missing and shelves are empty, prices go up.
This man is seen on store security video tossing CO detectors by the dozens into a garbage container, then without paying a penny, rolled it out of the store.
Sometimes doing the same Home Depot 4 times in one day.
This is the largest bust of a retail theft ring in the history of Queens.
Who would have thought that in a sanctuary state we'd have theft rings run by people who aren't supposed to be here? But what nobody's talking about is even though some of these guys are getting caught clearing out places like Home Depot on a regular basis, that is not going to stop the crime that's taking place. In fact, it's only going to get worse. Because you see, it's one thing to take down a bunch of kingpins, but the roots of their operation are still out there. And while we've got these high-profile busts with massive dollar amounts attached to them, the theft infrastructure that obtained all of these items and sold them off is still out there looking for more. Which leads us to the ultimate I told you so moment for New York City, because here we've been thinking this entire time that, oh, if we would just decriminalize theft and things like that, the world would be a better place, which is what they tell us, but what isn't actually true. Because even though the masterminds of this operation are headed off to jail for a very long time, everyone doing the actual stealing from places like Home Depot, Target, you name it, those folks are still out there. And places for them to offload their goods are still out there, because while stealing is still a crime and will result in a consequence eventually once the dollar amount gets high enough, you can sell whatever you want on the nearest street corner, which means anybody can throw down a blanket on a sidewalk and undercut Home Depot with their own products for 70% off. And that brings us to the real reason New York still has a massive shoplifting problem. Taking down the kingpins means nothing if you've got this whole criminal infrastructure out there that's just waiting for somebody else to come along and assume control of it. And how did we get here? Well, our socialist leaders look at the people breaking the law on the streets of this city and don't blame their actions at all. No, but instead they see them as victims of an affordability crisis, which explains why, in their minds, people are selling things they didn't pay for. They need money to pay their rent. They need money to buy their groceries. And although that might be true, paying your rent and buying your groceries when it's your job to rob grocery stores just jacks up prices for the law-abiding, fueling the unaffordability crisis, which was the excuse to decriminalize these open-air theft markets. And that's what these are. A few months ago, vendors were told they could sell whatever they want on a street corner, and there's not going to be anything other than a fine, if there's a fine. And we wonder why crime is out of control like this. Watch.
Suffolk County District Attorney says brazen thefts were caught on camera. Investigators say the same alleged thieves came back day after day after day at a Home Depot, in this case making off with $18,000 in power tools.
So we got a group of people stealing from Home Depot constantly. Tools, drills, you name it. And where does that stuff end up? Well, it can end up on the internet, or on the nearest street corner, and we've got proof that it is. But $18,000, that's nothing compared to what criminals did just a few months ago. Watch.
Rolls of electrical wiring worth $150 each, spray foam insulation, outlets, hammers and air conditioners, and the list goes on. A 13-member crew charged with stealing merchandise worth an estimated $2.2 million, sold on the black market.
Millions of dollars went out the door at these Home Depots all over the Northeast just because criminals residing in New York City, being protected by New York City, had a home base to plan all this stuff. And while it's great to see these criminals getting taken down, the entire apparatus underneath them hasn't gone anywhere. We're talking 8 people in one heist, 13 people in another heist. You need hundreds of people stealing from stores on a regular basis if you want to sustain an operation like this. And I've seen it with my own eyes. Unmarked vans pull up in certain parts of town and immediately start being unloaded, with briefcases being hauled out of these things and rollaway suitcases, which are then handed to people who space themselves out on a sidewalk and all seem to be selling the exact same things from stores like Home Depot, still in their original retail packaging. By the way, this stuff happens in neighborhoods where you'll see gang-related paraphernalia on buildings for groups like MS-13 who've decided for some reason that the largest sanctuary city in America is a great place to set up shop because nothing will ever apparently be done to stop them. And wait till you hear how many stores these criminals are going after.
From here, driving to stores in 9 Northeast states, hitting 128 separate Home Depot stores. We asked shoppers for their reactions to this meticulously planned scheme.
Yeah, the very big surprise.
Send them to jail and do their time.
So 128 Home Depots all over the Northeast. This is no longer just a New York City problem. Instead, we've got New York City, which is a sanctuary city, which has laws that protect criminals no matter where they're from and release them and get them back out on the streets as soon as possible. And crimes being premeditated and planned here now affect surrounding states. The entire Northeast is at risk because of what's being allowed to happen right here. That is frightening. But it gets even worse because the other thefts you're about to see shortly threaten even more of the country than just the Northeast and are even more sophisticated than people robbing Home Depot, filling up dumpsters with the stuff on the shelves and walking out without paying for anything, even the dumpster. But before we get to that, you gotta understand that if criminals are allowed to have a home base somewhere and operate in the open and the laws that we have here protect those people, that is going to be a problem that grows and grows and grows, which is the opposite of what we're told with decriminalization. We're told decriminalization makes everything better. We're told that if people get caught stealing and we let them off the hook and give them unlimited second chances, eventually they'll just conclude not to do it anymore. But no, here we have professional criminals. How do you become a professional criminal? Well, you gain experience. You figure out you can do something over and over again as if it's your full-time job, and boom, it becomes your full-time job and destroys the society around you. And this is all magnified by the fact that now anything that gets stolen from a CVS or a Walmart or a Target, it can make its way to the streets of New York City, to a street corner in a busy intersection and vanish for 100% profit, even if it's sold for 50% off. And if the police do go out and decide to enforce the now civil law violation of selling things you're not supposed to without any permits, those are the only costs the sellers of these goods incur. They don't pay rent, they don't pay utilities, they don't even pay for the stuff on the blankets. But then there's another question. If the people who are selling things don't produce identification or don't have it, since this is now a civil offense, who even gets the ticket for this fine? Is there even a consequence at all for this activity? Well, there's not. And as you're about to see, when you protect lawlessness at the lowest level, crime rises to new levels nobody ever thought possible.
8 men have been indicted on charges of conspiracy and grand larceny for a 6 heist of beef, lamb, cheese, copper, and cigarettes dating from last October to April. 3 of the suspects were arraigned in a lower Manhattan courtroom Wednesday afternoon, including the accused mastermind, who is also wanted by immigration and back in his home country of Uzbekistan.
We allege that the defendants impersonated legitimate trucking companies that were contracted to ship large orders of goods around the country. Instead of delivering the goods, we allege they stole them.
Okay, so here we've got a multi-million-dollar theft ring that didn't even bother going into the store to rob the store. No, instead, they went to where the products that wind up on the store's shelves, like at a Costco, end up coming from. They went to the distributors and they robbed the distributors. That way they don't have to compete with all of the criminals that are robbing the stores. No, they're ahead of the game here and they're taking truckloads of merchandise. Think about that, truckloads, and just diverting them to their theft warehouses somewhere, and then that stuff is getting resold somewhere. And they did this by impersonating the very trucking companies that were expected to pick up these goods and ship them out, something they were able to do by using hackers to get into the shipping databases, figuring out which carrier is supposed to show up, masquerading as that carrier, showing all the fake paperwork, and boom, the truck gets loaded up, but it's actually the criminals who are taking everything away. And where do you think the headquarters of this operation were? Put your seatbelt on because you're about to be shocked. Not really.
In this case, we allege the defendants interrupted this process by maintaining relationships with sophisticated hacking groups who use phishing scams to impersonate legitimate trucking businesses, and then bids were placed in the names of those businesses. They would go and they would show up to the manufacturer, and then they would present an invoice like this here, again, using the name, impersonating a legitimate shipping company. Once they did that, and we'll look at this map here, starting from pickups from a manufacturer, and they then sort of fan out, and this is just this illustrative fan out, and coming through New York City, you see, and then instead of...
Wow, so not only do you have millions of dollars in goods being given directly to criminals, you've got the information used by these businesses, the private information of employees, login credentials, the inner workings of these companies have just been totally taken over by criminals. That's destroying these businesses. They're not going to survive if we allow theft like this to continue, because an entire truckload of goods, I mean, that's going to clear you out. This is warfare on another level against our country, and it's organized crime, and it's being enabled and sponsored by a city that doesn't think punishing criminals, if they don't steal enough or if they're not the ones running the operation, isn't worth it. And now we have these operations. And the worst part about it is this stuff wasn't headed for New York City supermarkets exclusively. It was headed all across the country from distributors that just so happened to be located within reach of this gang. And if the crimes being planned and committed in New York City start affecting other states, start affecting the entire Northeast, start affecting the entire East Coast, I mean, the entire country is under threat from this sort of thing. And this needs to be taken seriously. And it all starts because we're not willing to punish the people who start out as shoplifters and become full-time criminals and then end up graduating and building their own crime operations because this city lets them do it. Ask yourself, is that a good idea? Absolutely not. This is bad for our entire country, even if the local leaders here think it's good for New York City for some reason.
And I mentioned this, but I want to underscore it. What is very disturbing here is that the victims, the direct victims of the alleged conspiracy, the owners of the goods and the legitimate shipping companies had no idea this was occurring.
Wow.
Until after the damage was done.
Yeah, I had no idea.
These crime networks are widespread. There is reason to believe there are other crews operating in the same fashion throughout the Northeast.
Oh, there's others.
Our investigation into this particular matter is continuing, and more broadly.
So there's other gangs out there doing the exact same thing. This is not some sort of one-off. This is not some freak incident where you had some exceptionally smart criminals who were doing something nobody else had ever thought of. No, there's other groups out there copying them and emulating them right now. And where do you think we're going to find those groups? Do you think we're going to find them in a place that punishes crime, or do you think we're going to find them in a place that lets criminals run free? And the sad reality here is you've got regular New Yorkers paying the price for this criminal behavior every single day, because even if the supermarkets getting robbed aren't in New York City, but the goods are, now you're erasing jobs from the local economy. Now you're giving money to criminals who will be able to afford groceries and be able to afford rent, which you yourself cannot afford. And remember, nobody starts out as a criminal mastermind. They start out as somebody who just decides to take things from CVS and walk out the door without paying, which affects people here in their day-to-day life in ways nobody's talking about.
First, Stolen goods means higher prices.
Yes, it does. Thank you.
We believe that at least some of the food was meant for grocery stores, like a Costco, for example. And when food orders go missing and shelves are empty, prices go up.
Right.
Second, many of the suppliers and trucking companies are small businesses with employees ranging from one employee to about 20. We're not talking here about multinational conglomerates. It can be hard to sustain these types of losses. Insurance may cover some, it may not.
If you even have it.
And that means that some of these businesses may not recover financially.
Right. So they're wiping out the small businesses, the logistics companies that are the ones getting robbed here and have their systems hacked into. Those companies are gone. Those jobs are gone. There's nothing affordable about having your job deleted by criminal hackers who steal all the goods from your warehouse and sell those on their own. Absolutely not. This is totally unsustainable. This is horrible for the local economy. And we've got this idea behind shoplifting that if somebody goes into a Walgreens or goes into a Home Depot and steals a few things, oh, it's a victimless crime. Oh, people have insurance. Look, insurance doesn't last forever. There's deductibles. Get robbed often enough, nobody will insure you. That's how insurance works. They're not sticking around to pay out claims forever from unlimited numbers of criminals committing unlimited crime inside your store or inside your business. And it's tough to get insurance for a sophisticated type of crime and intrusion you don't even know is out there. We're literally creating criminals in New York City that are more advanced than these businesses are prepared for. We heard that from the DA right here that these businesses, they thought they were making money. They're shipping out the goods. They're sending invoices. They think they're about to get paid, but really they just lost everything. And even though we hear a lot about affordability in these deep blue strongholds that have insane rent and insane prices because they're just trying to keep up with the crime taking place there, these guys that were robbing these warehouses and diverting all of these goods, where were they selling those goods? Well, some of it was getting sold on the internet, which means these guys were undercutting legitimate businesses operating in other states. Think about that for a second. There are victims of crime in New York City who aren't even in New York City and have no plans to ever come to a place like this, but they're getting their livelihoods destroyed. They don't even know why. They just think competition's real tough. They see other people undercutting them on the internet, undercutting them on Amazon potentially. Oh, how did they get such low prices? Oh, well, I guess we got to lower our prices. Or, oh, I guess we're not going to sell as much. This is plundering the legitimate economy of our country in ways that nobody wants to investigate. Because once you start investigating it, it becomes pretty obvious that the only solution to shoplifting is to build jails and fill them up. What do you think about that? I'll see you in the next video.